Hi everyone, and welcome to this information session, which I'm sure you all know is all about doing a postgraduate research degree at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre, which we typically shorten to NDARC. So my name is Alice Hubbard. I am an associate professor at NDARC, also deputy director. I did my PhD at NDARC many moons ago, and I'm now also a postgraduate research supervisor. And while I have the privilege of opening this information session, I am looking forward to introducing you to a number of my colleagues throughout who are either involved in doing research degrees at NDARC or in supervising research students. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Bidjigal people as the traditional custodians of the lands from which I'm joining this meeting today from the UNSW Randwick campus. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, noting that our speakers and audience are joining from many different locations across the country. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to any First Nations people joining our audience today. So I just want to start by outlining what you might expect from the session today. The key purpose is to give a sense of what it's like to do a PhD or a postgraduate research degree at NDARC, both in terms of research areas and methods, but also the support available here and the culture. So with that in mind, we'll be covering a little bit about about NDARC itself, a bit about NDARC's postgraduate research degree program. You'll hear a bit about some current postgraduate research candidates and hear a conversation between a few of our current candidates. And you'll also hear about the role of supervisors at NDARC, and you'll hear from a couple of our current supervisors. Then we'll run through what you could do next if you're interested in doing a postgraduate research degree at NDARC. And we'll also have some time at the end for some question and answers, and you can pop your questions into the Q&A function at any time during the webinar. We'll pick them up at the end or when we actually get to the Q&A session. I'd like to note that the session is being recorded and will be placed on our website afterwards. And the other thing to note is that we will be referring you to our website at various points through this information session. To help direct you to the right place, we'll share a single QR code with you at the end of the slides, which will link you to the various resources we mentioned. So you don't need to keep track of all the links and QR codes as we go. All right, so let's start with a little bit about NDARC. So we were established in 1987. We are Australia's leading research group in the alcohol and other drug sector, and we're ranked among the top 3 across the globe in terms of substance use research. We are funded by the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care and also UNSW Sydney. And we sit within the Faculty of Medicine and Health at UNSW Sydney. We're physically located in Randwick, and this is our current building here. But next year, we're excited to be moving to what's called the Health Translation Hub. So fancy new building on the UNSW Kensington campus, and the building connects hospital and research staff across the Faculty of Medicine. So a little bit about our areas of research. So these are the areas that we've highlighted as research strengths for NDARC, but we do cover a range of areas within the alcohol and other drug field. So our nominated strengths are in epidemiology and emerging trends, in prevention and early intervention, and also treatment and harm reduction. We have a focus on priority populations in much of our research, drug policy, criminal justice system, and mental and physical comorbidities. And you'll see we've highlighted here big data and new technologies as a methodological strength. But there is expertise across a whole range of methodologies within NDARC. So these include clinical trials, cohort studies, qualitative research, systematic reviews, among a range of other methods. So we've got it all covered. Okay, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Rachel Sutherland now to talk about our postgraduate research degree program.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alice. And yeah, lovely to be here with you all today. So my name's Rachel Sutherland. I'm a senior research fellow here at NDARC. So I completed my PhD about 6 years ago, and am also currently acting deputy director alongside Alice. So yes, as mentioned today, I'm just going to give you an overview of the different degrees that are available via NDARC's postgraduate research program, and also introduce you to some of our current postgraduate research students. Before I do that, I do just want to flag that in some on our website or on our inbox, you might also see reference to higher degree research or HDR. And really, we're using that term interchangeably with postgraduate research. Yeah, so if you see those, just to be aware that those are essentially the same thing. So at NDARC, there are essentially 3 degrees that you can do via our postgraduate research program. So the first of that is a Doctor of Philosophy, or your PhD, and that's the highest degree qualification available. And that's a 3 to 4 year full-time research project that results in an end product that's a thesis of no more than 100,000 words. And the thesis provides evidence of independent thought, critical analysis, and your expert knowledge of the subject that you're studying. And that's because as a PhD student, you're being trained in essentially how to be an independent researcher. In addition to that, there's also the Masters by Research program, or MRes. So as you can see, that's a little bit shorter than a PhD, so 1.5 to 2 years. But it also is still very much focused on the completion of independent and original research, and you will be producing a thesis that's a little bit shorter, so that's 75,000 words. And finally, there's also the Master of Philosophy, or the MPhil. So that's about the same duration as the MRes, so 1.5 to 2 years, but that's a combination of coursework and research. And you produce a thesis that's a lot shorter, so that's about 40,000 words. And that can be a good option for people who may have limited experience with research, or who may not otherwise be eligible for doing a PhD or an MRes at this stage. And I should flag that at NDARC, most of our postgraduate research students are PhD students, but we do also have a handful of MRes students, but far less experience with the MPhils, just to be transparent about that. All of our students are enrolled through the UNSW School of Population Health, and currently we have 12 postgraduate research students, as well as a couple more that are starting next year. And as Alice said, NDARC has been established since about the mid-1980s, and since that time, we've had over 100 people complete their postgraduate research through NDARC. And those individuals have gone on to enjoy careers in a variety of different areas. So people have remained in academia, both in Australia and internationally. Some people have gone on to industries. So for example, pharmaceutical companies, and other people have gone to government and non-government organisations. So completing these kind of degrees can provide you with the skills to pursue careers in a range of different areas. And there is a link there if you're interested in finding a bit more information about any of that. Alice, if you're happy to go on to the next slide. And Alice, just move on to the next box. That'd be great. Yeah. So there's also a range of supports that we offer for our postgraduate research students. So the first of that is financial support. So students can apply for a scholarship through the university, which is provides a 35,000 per annum stipend. So that is tax-free. So to put that in context, that is equivalent to about $56,000 gross salary. If you're not successful for the UNSW scholarship, then NDARC does also have the option of providing scholarships to people as well for an equivalent amount. So if you apply for a UNSW scholarship but you're not successful, then can talk to your supervisor about applying for an NDARC scholarship. In addition to the stipends provided by the scholarship, there's also opportunities for paid work at NDARC. So many of our postgraduate research students will work casually throughout their degree. So often we'll work 1 or 2 days a week, and that will kind of ebb and flow depending on people's workload at the time. There's also professional development and research support funds that are available to students. And they're funds that can be used to pay to present your findings at international or national conferences, but also to go to any training courses that you might desire. In addition to that, there's a range of really great cultural supports that we offer as well. So we do very much value, our current postgraduate research students are very much valued members of NDARC, and they're recognised as the next generation of drug and alcohol researchers in the field. Students are all provided with their own desk, their own computer, and they have access to all the same resources that staff do. And it's a really close-knit organisation. So we will have weekly morning teas on a Monday morning. We've also got a monthly staff and student lunch. And we provide about 2 or 3 social events per year. And then finally, there's also training and development support as well. So because we're located within the university, you'll have access to UNSW training and resources. So for example, if you needed support doing a systematic review, there's outreach or librarians that you can access who will be able to support you with that process. There's also statistical support and so on. Internally, we also have our own group of postgraduate research students. So that's a peer-led group. And they meet monthly to support each other and also to identify training opportunities that are of relevance to them. And one of the great things that they have established is regular career conversations. So that involves conversations with people who have completed their PhD and then have gone on to pathway to have a career in a variety of different sectors. So it's really good exposure early on in your degree as to what kind of career pathways are open to you. As I mentioned, there's also funds to attend professional development activities, and there's also additional things like a weekly webinar. So NDARC offers internal weekly webinars where we have people internal and externally present on a range of topics in the AOD field. So there's really great opportunities to be exposed to a variety of drug and alcohol research, not just on your research topic. As I mentioned, we currently have 12 postgraduate research candidates at NDARC. I'm not going to go through these in detail. The main thing here is just to highlight that there's a range of different topics that people focus on. And as Alice has mentioned, there's also a range of different methodologies that people will use and specialise in. So some people will do primary data collection, some people will focus on qualitative versus longitudinal versus cross-sectional surveys. Some people will do large kind of data linkage. So there's really just a variety of options that are available to people. And in a little bit, you will be hearing from Lucy Tran, who's one of our current research candidates. And also from Emily Symes, who is a clinician, so works in emergency departments, but decided to come to NDARC to do her PhD on a topic that was of interest and of relevance to her clinically. And I think it is important to note here that we do also have quite a few clinicians that have decided to come to NDARC to do their PhD. So people who have worked as doctors or work in the health sector and then decided they wanted to come to NDARC to investigate a topic that was of importance to them and their clinical practice. So on that note, I will introduce you to, as I said, Lucy and Emily will be having a conversation with Crystal McDonald, who is our most recent PhD graduate here at NDARC, and they'll be talking about their experiences doing a PhD here. If you're happy to play that, Alice, yeah.
Okay, hi, I'm Crystal. I'm a postdoc at NDARC, and today I'm going to be talking to Emily and Lucy, who are current PhD candidates at NDARC, about their experiences. I've seen both of your work in presentations. It's super interesting. I guess I'm interested in why you chose NDARC. I know you started as an RA, Lucy, so why did you do a PhD at NDARC?
Becoming a research assistant, it sort of let me in more into the world of research. Because previously my only exposure was through an honours project. Becoming a research assistant and doing it essentially for 12 months, it really showed me the other side of research. And then I think also being at NDARC, being exposed to so many different areas of drug and alcohol. It's not that NDARC specializes in one drug or alcohol. So I think it was just really interesting just to get that exposure, see different researchers, see people who were doing their PhD, get their perspective on doing a PhD, but then also speaking to, you know, the more senior researchers and sort of seeing what their research was. And I think that sort of then was like, oh, okay, maybe a PhD is something I want to explore a little bit more. But then working as an, you know, research assistant at NDARC really then ignited that, okay, maybe research is something I really want to pursue and it is really interesting and it can have quite a lot of impact. So I think that's why, yeah, I sort of chose NDARC because I was already in it, but I could see how the researchers at NDARC were having an impact on their communities and, you know, the sort of world at large.
And that was a similar experience for me, I think, as well. I liked the culture of NDARC. It was a nice place to work in, and similar to you, saw what other people were doing, and coming from a psychology perspective, seeing how that could be applied in a totally different area. Yours is quite different though, Emily, because you're a real doctor. You're a medical doctor.
All different types of doctors, right?
So yeah, how did you kind of come across NDARC and want to come here to do a PhD?
Yeah, so it was actually an advertisement. It was a joint sort of, I guess, position between sort of NDARC at UNSW as well as ACON. So I was actually coming up towards the end of my specialty training, and then I was very interested in doing research, but didn't really have an idea of sort of where to go with things. And I guess it was actually like very fortunate because this was sort of a topic that was, you know, I was like, I wanted to explore, you know, at some stage, and then it kind of, the timing happened and it was really, really, you know, great. I saw, you know, an ad that, you know, Louisa and the people from ACON put out. And then essentially applied through that, and then, you know, got the scholarship position from there. And, you know, essentially the topic they kind of put forward was quite a broad topic. You know, they just wanted to explore essentially what I'm looking at, mental health and substance use outcomes in trans and gender diverse people. And you know, that sort of fit really nicely with the clinical work too.
Yeah.
So I chose my supervisor while I was a research assistant, Lucy, because I was interested in psychology and a new researcher came. I liked his research, but I'm wondering how both of you chose your supervisors and how the process worked for you, how often you met. I would meet with my supervisor probably once every 2 weeks or so. Was it similar? I mean, you've got a different experience, Emily, because you're a doctor as well. You've probably got a busy schedule. So how often do you meet?
Actually, fairly frequently, yeah. So we try to meet every week. Which is really good. You know, if you're, you know, stuck with a certain area, you know, not too sure sort of how to proceed, then, you know, weekly meetings are really good because then you can kind of work through things with your supervisors.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's very busy with their own things, but, you know, we make time. So I think that's the important thing.
I feel like it's a changing process too throughout my PhD. Sometimes you'd have to meet much sooner than even once a week if you had a particular problem you needed to go through, or if you were working on something you could have a bit more time. So that's so true, actually. It can change. But yeah, how did you choose your supervisors as well?
Yeah, well, there was actually part of the whole, you know, scholarship application. Yeah, Louisa, who's got a role at ACON as well. So she, you know, was very interested in and is very involved, you know, with health outcomes in the LGBT community. So, you know, I guess it was natural for her to then sort of take on that role as a primary supervisor. And Rachel as well, you know, was part of that supervisory team. You know, they both have explored and published stuff in the area. So, yeah.
So I was similar to you, Lucy. Started as a research assistant at NDARC, and then I was always interested in psychology. That was my undergrad degree. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. And then Don Weatherburn came to NDARC, and his research is very forensic psych kind of related, looking at courts, you know, criminal justice system area, which I was really interested in. So I reached out to Don, and then we kind of formulated, it was very collaborative. We formulated a plan of what we wanted to look at, and I wonder if yours was kind of similar process. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, it was a very similar process. So when I was working as a research assistant at NDARC, I worked quite a lot with Louisa, but then Rebecca, I would hear about her research. I got, you know, pulled into some discussions. I was like, okay, this is a very interesting mix of areas. And then, yeah, sort of when I proposed a PhD idea, I was like, oh, well, I would like to work with both of you. So can we figure out a topic that sort of covers all of my interests, but also covers what you guys are very knowledgeable in, and draw from their knowledge and draw from their experience.
So it sounds very collaborative, which is what exactly my experience was.
And I think that's what NDARC is good at, in that there's going to be researchers at NDARC who have a very set idea of like, here's an interesting topic that I think would be great as a PhD topic. But if you approach someone like, hi, I'm really interested in a PhD, but I really want to explore this facet of it. You know, there's always going to be someone who's like, absolutely, let's explore that a little bit more. Let's flesh that out. Let's put you in the best position that we can so that you can apply for scholarships and be ready.
And what do you think, what's been the best part of your PhD so far? If you could think of one highlight that you want to point out, what would you think it would be?
One massive perk is, for me especially, I've been able to travel quite a bit with my PhD. So presenting my research at different conferences has allowed me to travel to North America. It's allowed me to travel to Europe, you know, as well as traveling within Australia. So I think it's a nice way to be able to connect with people internationally through a PhD, knowing that you do have those opportunities of being able to go abroad and present your work and connect with people who are very interested in what you're doing.
I think traveling, one of my favourite parts as well of my PhD. Went to Vienna and got to see other research, but got to sightsee. It was definitely a nice little perk as part of doing a PhD. That's for sure. You know, I worked during my PhD as a research assistant. You're a doctor, because you're a real doctor, Emily. And Lucy, you're also working as an RA. So I guess, like, is that how you manage doing a PhD and getting the scholarship, as well as, you know, affording to live in Sydney? It's expensive right now. So yeah, just what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Certainly it is. Yeah, it's expensive time right now. Yeah, but yeah, definitely sort of being able to have the opportunity to do other work. And again, whether that's, you know, working as a research assistant or, you know, being able to work in your own field as well. You know, I think that does help. And, you know, the scholarships, you know, they do provide some additional support as well. So, you know, conference support and travel, and additional research costs as well. That's, you know, it's very, very helpful.
And I think the fact that it's tax-free money, the scholarship that is a big bonus, because whatever you know, that's your money, and then working to supplement that, it's very helpful. I found it really easy to manage working during my PhD. I think you both sound like you've had that experience too. Lucy, do you find it pretty easy to manage working as well? Because you're also a clinician too. So.
Well, yeah, I guess when the balance was clinician, research officer, research assistant, and then PhD became sometimes difficult. But I think, being able to manage the three and having the exposure to the three is really helpful. And like you said, I think very much in the context of NDARC, they're very much aware that you're doing a PhD. They are aware that a PhD ebbs and flows at times. You know, there's going to be times where there's a little bit more work entailed, but there's other times where things are a little bit more quieter with your PhD. And they're very much aware of like, okay, well, if you're my research assistant or you're my research officer, then we can tailor your hours based on what you're needing for your PhD, which I think is really helpful and really helps with just the balance of things, while also knowing, okay, I am going to have some steady additional income, because the stipend, you know, isn't always going to cover everything that you need at times.
I think, Emily, it's important you mentioned the extra benefits you get aside from the scholarship, because I got a computer during my PhD, like you said, travel, like you actually do have funds you can access to get things you might need, go to courses you might need. I think both of you have touched on the idea that your PhD is something that it might be slower paced than working in an ED ward, but it's also something that you've got to concentrate on and put time into. And so I think for me, if I was thinking of my best advice for a potential student, would be to choose a topic you're really interested in, that you really like, because you're going to be with it for at least 3.5 years. So just choose something you really see yourself, you know, working in and enjoying. What would be either of your best advice or best tip for a future student?
Your supervisors are there to support you. They're there to champion you. And I think, sometimes it is quite important to think about who your supervisory team is in that instance. And I think also jumping on that is also you have a topic that you set out at the beginning of your PhD. And I think also knowing that your PhD is going to change, it's going to morph, it's going to evolve. And during your PhD, just like any other job, you're going to have different areas of interest throughout it. And knowing that just because you look into a topic at the beginning of your PhD doesn't mean that that is it. Like there are ways that you can explore your PhD topic, but through different facets. So I think for someone who's thinking about doing a PhD and thinking, oh no, I have to make a decision now for the next 3 to 4 years. It's like, yes, you do, but you can change throughout that time. And there's always ways that you can weave in that story throughout your PhD that actually it doesn't have to lock you in the way that you think it's going to lock you in as someone who's just going to start out their PhD. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Emily and Lucy, for talking to me today. It was really, you gave a lot of good insights. It was nice to chat to you. Thanks for tuning in. I hope it was helpful. For any information about postgraduate opportunities, please see our website. Okay, hi.
Hello, thanks team for that great talk. Okay, so next up, my name's Sarah Feinbach. I'm a researcher here at NDARC. I've been at NDARC for about 6 years. I came across straight after I finished my PhD research, and I've never left. So my job today is to tell you a little bit about what to expect from your supervisors if you come to do a research degree at NDARC. So what your supervision team will do is they will help you through the whole spectrum of your research degree. So that starts before you even enroll. Your PhD or your master's supervisors will help you to develop a research question if there's an area that you're interested in particular, or they can help to match you with a project if they have one developed already. They will also help you to apply for your PhD or your research degree, as well as applying for your scholarship. So all of this work happens before you even start, and it tends to take a few months to get all of that in order. Once you start your project, they will help you to design and to deliver your research project. So this involves developing research questions, working out methods to answer those questions, collecting, managing data, writing in an academic way, as well as meeting your academic milestones. They will also revise your work and review your work regularly. We tend to find that about weekly meetings, as the students have just mentioned, is about right throughout your project, although this might vary a bit, but that's about right in terms of level of contact with your supervisors. And during these meetings, you can review anything that's happening in your project, as well as your current work, in which they will provide you with regular feedback throughout your course. They will also be able to provide you with technical advice. So if you've got particular questions about stats or how to analyze data, how to tackle a particular problem, they will be there for you. And if they don't have the answers, they'll be able to link you with the experts who do. Generally, a supervision team is about 1 or 2 primary supervisors, we call it, and that is supported by often a couple of extra supervisors along the way who might duck in and out of your project to support you with particular areas. Okay, so your supervisors will be there to help you with all the other bits and pieces of doing a research degree. So this involves managing your scholarship. It involves also working to link you with paid work if that's something that you're interested or needing to do. They'll help you to deal with the admin with your degree. So this is dealing with the university, which has a range of requirements that you need to fulfill each year. So they'll help you to step you through that process. They will also help to build your network. NDARC has a broad range of contacts around the place doing different types of work, and they'll help you to link you in with different key colleagues that you might need to know as you go. It is their job to understand where you're at with your project as well as in your life, and to advocate for you across the centre as well as with the university. Finally, we also say that a PhD supervisor or a research degree supervisor's job is not done until a student is happily settled into a job following their degree. And so they will help to build your career, to develop skills, to plan, and to link you with employment options that use your new fantastic research skills. What won't an NDARC supervisor do? Okay, they're not here to tell you what to do. As Rachel mentioned, doing a research degree is about becoming an independent academic. And so they're not there to be your boss, they're there to help you to develop your research skills. They're also not going to write your thesis, nor will they micromanage your project. Because you've now developed your independent research skills, they're not going to also take credit for your work. This is now your work that you own and that you stand in front of. So what do we think makes NDARC supervisors the best? Well, as we've mentioned, we've got over 100 graduates who've come through NDARC. We currently have about 35 academics available to supervise, and I'll share a link in a moment where you can see the current academic team. And this includes a range of skills, including qualitative research, quant research, epi, data linkage, policy, co-design, community engagement, you name it. We have a broad network across both local within New South Wales, national and also international colleagues. And so this can be really important to doing a fantastic project. And finally, we see drug and alcohol as being an area that's really broad in nature. It's not just about the substance or the treatment. And so this means that it includes really interesting areas like social determinants of health, health policy, can include economics, can also include treatment and prevention. So this makes some of our projects really interesting because you can cover a whole range of different areas. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Here on the screen, there's a QR code that you can follow to link with our current supervisors who are available. We're now going to show you a short video highlighting a couple of our supervisors, including myself. But first up, we've got Associate Professor Rebecca McKeaton, who's one of our fab supervisors at NDARC, who's going to tell you a little bit about the experience of being a supervisor at NDARC.
Hi, I'm Rebecca McKeaton. I'm an associate professor at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Centre at UNSW. And I work here to lead a program of research on stimulant use, clinical trials and epidemiology. I'm particularly interested in methamphetamine. That's crystal meth or ice, and I've been doing research in that area for over 20 years now. I've led quite a lot of different research projects on that area and supervised PhD students. And today I think I'm here to talk about PhD students. And I guess if you're interested in doing a research project in this area, I'm quite interested in hearing from you. We're looking for people who might want to join our team to look into any aspect of stimulant use, but also anything that's related to that might interest you. I'm open to different aspects of the research in terms of the different methods you might be interested in using, and very open to having a conversation about what you're interested in looking at. The kind of things that I look for in a PhD student is someone who's got initiative, who's very curious, has their own ideas and has an incisive mind and a tenacity to see through a long research project. In our team, we work with a variety of different people. Some of us work on the front line in clinical services. We're working very much in face-to-face contact with people who use methamphetamine and very much exposed to the types of issues that they're experiencing in their life. And I guess one of my passions is trying to develop better interventions and responses to meet the needs of those people very directly. I do love very pragmatic research that has a frontline impact. So if that's your stick, please be in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I have an exciting program of work here at NDARC. Together with my brilliant team, our work is focused on preventing alcohol and other drug use and harms. We partner with community organisations, community groups, non-government services to work with them to identify and answer their research questions. It's really fun. I've supervised 3 PhD students through to completion, and I've learnt a lot from each of these students. Supervision is one of the best parts of my job. I really enjoy working with people to develop their research skills, and I tell you, it's pretty satisfying seeing them walk across the stage after all that hard work. When I look for PhD students, I look for someone who I can imagine spending a lot of time with. A PhD project involves working really closely with your supervisors, and so having someone that you think you can hang out with really helps. I also consider if they're ready to tackle a PhD, if they are motivated, if they can write clearly, how they engage with feedback, because doing a PhD is working on something until it's done And so there's a lot of versions. We often have many, many versions of documents, and this goes both ways. We comment on each other's work. And so that process of engaging with PhD and trying to with feedback and trying to integrate it into your work is really important. We have a couple of big projects that we're looking at for PhD students currently. I'm going to take 1 minute to tell you about a particularly exciting one. So together with our friends at the Alcohol and Drug Foundation, we're working to develop a project with the local drug action teams. Now, local drug action teams are a network of groups across Australia that work on community prevention. And we're looking at partnering with a couple of local drug action teams over the next couple of years to design and then evaluate new community prevention programs. This project would involve getting out into the community, working with these groups, and also so it would develop community engagement skills as well as qualitative and quantitative research skills that I think would be really useful for a range of careers going forwards. Finally, I'll finish with some thoughts on why I would consider doing a PhD quite a useful or attractive thing. Doing a PhD is more than just a title. It can be defining, it gives you meaning, gives you a sense of direction, and makes you an expert in an area. It opens up a whole range of career opportunities, and it also and employment opportunities, and it also demonstrates your potential for impact as well as global recognition. On a personal note, I would say I learned more doing my PhD than I did in double the work years that I had before I did that. And the research world has developed my research, but also other professional skills which I use every day. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to my wonderful colleagues for those inspiring talks. I hope it has piqued your interest, and if so, you might like to hear about what we recommend you do next if you're interested in doing a postgraduate research degree at NDARC. So we've got a 6-step process outlined here. First up is to self-assess your eligibility for admission into a PhD. And I say PhD here, we have highlighted that's the main experience that we have here at NDARC. What I'm going to outline are the admission requirements for entry into a PhD, but it is helpful to note that you can also gain entry into Masters by Research or MPhil with similar but slightly less stringent criteria, and you can find those details on our website. Sorry. So to start, so across UNSW, students undertaking postgraduate research degree are expected to have English language proficiency, meet residency and visa requirements, and also to be on site. So majority of work being remote is only possible by exception, and that's a requirement across UNSW. That's not something NDARC has decided. And then if you're thinking about a PhD specifically within NDARC, and as we've mentioned before, enrolment is through the School of Population Health, and these are their requirements for entry into a PhD at the school. You could either have a 4-year bachelor's degree with first class honours or upper second class honours. If you don't have that, but you have an Australian or New Zealand medical degree and 1 year as an intern, then you would be eligible. Alternatively, if you don't have those qualifications, but you have a 3-year bachelor degree and you've got a year of full-time research experience where that has included some form of a thesis, you could be eligible that way. And if that qualification is more than 5 years old, you also need to have a first author publication. And just a note there around those bachelor degrees, that the qualifications need to be in a relevant field to the research that you're proposing. So obviously have to have some relevance to alcohol and other drug research, but also relevant expertise in terms of content area or methodology. And then there is one additional pathway for anyone that might have done a master's degree through the UNSW School of Population Health. around specific courses that you might have to complete or and grades, and we can provide more detail on that if you're interested. So that's the first step, to determine your own eligibility, and then you can submit an expression of interest to us and we can confirm whether we think you're likely to be eligible. And here I note that we refer to your potential eligibility. It's not us who decide whether you are eligible to do a PhD at UNSW or through the school. And often the eligibility requirements are subject to change. So we can obviously give you a sense based on our experience with prior students, but we cannot confirm that you will gain eligibility. You'd have to reach out to the school for that. And the expression of interest form, you can find that on our website, and we'll link you back to this page at the end. So third step is then to find a supervisor you'd like to work with. So you can do that in 3 possible ways. You can either select a project from the current opportunities that we have listed on the NDARC website. These already have supervisors attached, so it's all pretty much laid out for you. You just need to reach out. The second option is to come up with your own project and then to search for a supervisor who has relevant expertise. And in doing so, it's good to consider both the content area and also the methods that you think you might use. And then the third option, if you don't have a project idea, you can search for a supervisor who has related content expertise and or methodological expertise in your area of interest. And you can do these searches for both projects and for supervisors, again, on our website. Then number 4 is to reach out to potential supervisors and discuss your compatibility with that supervisor and also the compatibility around possible research projects and their research interests. Then you would work with that prospective supervisor to develop a research proposal. You share it with the supervisor and you refine it together. And then if the supervisor agrees that it's all good to go, the proposal is looking good, then you can apply for admission. And in the same step, you can apply for a scholarship if that's what you need. And that all happens on the UNSW website, which again, we'll provide a link for. And just to note the next deadlines, so the next round of applications for local students close on the 17th of January, and that would be for commencing in term 2 of next year. And then the next round for international applicants closes in May next year, and that would be for commencing study in term 1 of 2026. So just a quick summary of those steps. So self-assess yourself for eligibility for admission into the degree, submit an EOI and we can confirm whether we agree with that. Find a supervisor you'd like to work with, reach out to that supervisor and discuss compatibility and possible research projects. And that might be an iterative process. You might work out that one avenue is not the best way to go and go back and talk to some other potential supervisors until you find the right path forward. You develop the research proposal in collaboration with the prospective supervisor, and then you can apply for admission and for scholarship. And just before we get into the Q&A, to link you, as we promised, to all of the resources that we've referenced today. So if you use this QR code, it will take you to a page where the links to the various parts of our website are all included together. And also to flag that we have a generic inbox for postgraduate research degree inquiry. So that's ndarc.hdr@unsw.edu.au. That's where you can send your expression of interest, but also other questions that you might have. All right, I think it might be time to get into the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing and invite Rachel and Sarah to turn their cameras back on. And we also have Crystal, who we introduced earlier as our most recent PhD graduate, joining for the question and answer time. Okay, I have a blank screen over there. Has my screen stopped sharing?
Yep,
Yeah.
all good.
Great. All right. Okay, I'm just going to open up the Q&A. Let's have a look. All right, I can see one around online options from Amy and Amelia. As I flagged before, that UNSW has a general rule around enrolments not being remote unless there is a really strong case for that being important. So it's something you could give a go, but I think you're probably, yeah, it's a risky avenue, I think. So unfortunately, yeah, remote study is probably not going to get through. It's sad. Okay. Let's see, maybe this one for Rachel. Can you provide more detail about the NDARC specific scholarships, including funding amounts?
Yes, great question. So the amounts are equivalent to, so we match the UNSW amount, which is 38K per annum, tax-free. So it's equivalent to that. And so we do encourage people to first apply for the UNSW scholarship. And then if you're not successful, or like other scholarships, some people have got NHMRC scholarships or similar, but if you're not successful for the university scholarship, then talk to your supervisor about putting forward for an NDARC scholarship.
Right.
Anything you want to add to that, Alice?
No, I think you're right. That's great. Okay, we have a question here around what's the cost to the student for local enrollment. I wonder, Sarah, if you've got any, if you want to take that one.
Sure. I mean, so this is just talking about PhD degrees. It's different for the different coursework. Master's degrees, they come with different costs, but for the PhD degree, to my understanding, it's about $91 a term. It's very cheap. It's sort of like an admin fee, but there isn't actually like fees that accrue like with other degrees as part of a PhD. And I'm sorry, but I don't actually know the costs of the MPhil or the MRes degrees, but I imagine that they come with a higher cost because you're paying for more coursework. I'm going to leave that one with you guys if anyone's got any more information on that.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either, but yeah, it's probably
all available on the UNSW website.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, maybe this one's for you, Crystal. UNSW provides statistical support. What does that look like, and how do you access this service?
I haven't accessed it, but I know there's Stats Central, I think, Alice. Is that the right name for it? Stats Central. So I've never used it. I actually learned all my stats kind of on the go with my supervisor. So I use Starter, which is more of a coding type of stats, whereas my psych degree is SPSS. So it's a bit of a learning curve, but it actually wasn't as bad as I thought because my supervisor was really supportive and helpful. There's also LinkedIn Learning, which as a UNSW student or staff member, you get for free. And I actually looked at a starter course on LinkedIn Learning for free, which was really good. So there is those services as well you can access.
Yeah, so those are like the official services, and I guess like we've got a lot of biostatistical expertise at NDARC, and we all rely on each other either just for casual advice or inviting people to get involved in our projects if we think they've got relevant expertise. So there's many avenues for getting that type of support. Okay, a question here around practicalities and timing. So the next cutoff for applications is January 17th, but it's going to be challenging to line up an application in that time, given there is a shutdown coming. So if the next submission period is May 2025, which is quite far away, but is that the only viable option? I suspect, unfortunately, it is. I mean, it is possible, I think, to submit an application, and if you're successful, so one of our most recent successful scholarship recipients was supposed to have entry to the degree in term 2, and then there's actually enough time for her to enroll term 1, so they're allowing her to bring her enrollment forward. So it all just depends on how quickly they go through that assessment process. So I wouldn't want to say it's absolutely not possible, but probably for planning purposes is safe to plan for September.
And Alice, I was probably just going to add to that it's probably, if you don't have an established idea or proposal in place, it's probably even more likely that it will need to be a bit later. Like if it's a project that's already listed on the NDARC website, that's already got supervisors attached to it, then maybe potentially it's a bit more straightforward to get that submitted. But if you're kind of developing a new kind of research proposal and still haven't had any conversations with supervisors, then yeah, it might be pushing it a little bit to meet that Jan deadline.
Yeah, good point, Rachel. Okay, a question here around what's the best approach if someone is not successful with securing an international scholarship from UNSW, because they are really competitive, and yes, that is the case. Wondering more about NDARC scholarships. In this situation, it's a little bit challenging because international students are faced with much higher tuition fees than local students, and the NDARC scholarships are available to cover living expenses, but they don't cover tuition fees. So if it was possible for an international applicant, if it was possible to get a tuition fee scholarship, then you'd be in a great position to apply for an NDARC scholarship for your living expenses. But otherwise, without that tuition fee scholarship, you'd be faced with some pretty heavy fees. Okay, what else have we got? There's quite a few questions around masters. I wonder, Rachel, if you want to take them. So just about alternative pathways, either through a master's, so eligibility for a master's, and also is that a pathway to doing a PhD?
Yes, maybe you can help me out here. So in terms of eligibility for a master's, so it is different eligibility than doing a PhD. So the entry requirements are a 4-year bachelor degree with a second-class honours from UNSW, or an equivalent qualification from another kind of tertiary institution. So that's the entry criteria in terms of a Masters of Research. In terms of whether it's a pathway to do a PhD, if you complete your Masters, that's kind of an entry to do a PhD. But there are some people who will try to transfer from an MRes to a PhD kind of partway through, and that can be a little bit more challenging. So there's additional requirements that you need to meet to be able to make that transfer. So I'd be a little bit cautious about promoting that as a transition pathway into a PhD. But Sarah, I know you've had a few conversations around this, or Alice, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I mean, I think that's about what I would say as well, Rach. It's a little bit case by case. They sometimes there can be some recognition of if you've got research like professional experience, like a published first author paper or something like that. But yeah, broadly, that's about right. But there is a bit of a case by case assessment sometimes. And again, that's sort of managed by the university rather than by our centre in terms of eligibility.
Yeah. Maybe another one for Rachel about wondering what our position is on lived experience researchers.
Fantastic. Yes, very much encourage anyone with lived experience. That's definitely something that we would be very happy to kind of talk to people about, and very much recognize and value the lived experience, or, you know, people who have lived experience of drug use. And certainly many people at NDARC will also, you know, have those experiences as well, may not be kind of openly identified in that way. But yeah, certainly very, very much welcome that. And there's increasing recognition across kind of academia and research that this is increasingly important. So yeah, that's a great question, and thank you for flagging. Come and talk to us.
Yeah. Okay, maybe one for you, Sarah. Do you offer PhDs in partnership with government organisations? For example, New South Wales Health, who already may be working in drug and alcohol or epidemiology related work.
Yeah, I mean, help me out here, guys. But to my understanding, yeah, we have current and previous PhD students who are employed by different organisations. I think Emily spoke really nicely to that sort of shared arrangement in her interview a couple of minutes ago. In New South Wales Health, yeah, I mean, all of those skills are relevant, and I think it's just about looking at the case by case, but certainly we're really open to those sorts of partnerships.
Yeah, I think we'd really value them. I mean, you're bringing all of that experience and day-to-day relevant expertise. So I think it'd be something we'd really love to make work. Okay, there's a couple of questions about drug action teams, which I think have kind of been answered by the attendees themselves. So thanks, guys. And I think some more individual questions that have been tackled elsewhere. So maybe the last one is just around if there are scholarships for MRes or MPhil. Rachel, do you want to take that?
Great question. I'm not sure for MPhil, but definitely for MRes. So you've just had a student submit their thesis for their MRes, and they had an RTP. Is that it? RTP scholarship through the university. So it was largely the same process that you would go through for a PhD, and it was equivalent amount. So yes, there are scholarships for MRes. Not entirely sure for MPhil. Apologies, would have to look into that and get back to you.
I don't know either. I think that might be the end of the questions. So I guess, I mean, it's actually quite good time. We're nearly at the end anyway, but I just wanted to see if Rachel, Crystal or Sarah wanted to highlight anything additional or anticipate any questions that people might have once we get offline.
I mean, just the only thing I would add, there's a lot of kind of specific questions that I think case by case can be kind of addressed through a conversation. It's tricky to try and consider everybody's unique circumstances in a group like this. So I just encourage you to reach out and we can look at what the options are.
Yeah, nothing really to add from me. I guess just to go back to that point about the lived experience, I think that really is really important, and that is something that we are trying to attract more to NDARC. So if you are somebody with lived experience thinking about doing a PhD, please do feel free to come and have that conversation with us. Very keen for that to happen.
And one more question is we can, I think, address it fairly quickly, has just come in around conference attendance, or career development opportunities. Does NDARC support that? And that's an absolute yes. As Rachel, I think, mentioned, all of our PhD students have access to professional development funds and also funds to support their research. So they obviously in consultation with their supervisor, but can choose how to spend that money to best make best use of it for their career. All right, I think we might close there. It's been a really great session. I hope everyone has found it informative and enjoyable and has now a better sense of what goes on in PhD land at NDARC. Thank you for your interest and for coming. And we look forward to hearing from you. I hope you all have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.